introduce John, who's really no stranger to our audience in the workplace mental health, because he's an occupational hygienist at OHCOW, who began on May 1st, 1989. So last week was his 36th anniversary with us. And through his work with indoor air quality and determining other health and safety issues in the workplace, came to realize, along with a lot of our labor partners, that stress and psychological health and safety and psychosocial factors are at play in people's well-being and perception of the workplace, throughout his career, and has been leading our efforts since 2009 to do in response to that. And that's actually where Stress Assess came from. And now he's going to share his voice of experience, 15 years and 15 insights on workplace survey support. So that's a great addition to our conversation today. So thanks a lot, John.
Thanks, Val. So I have 15 minutes to talk about 15 things. Hang on to your hat. Here goes. First of all, you can't do it alone. You need partners, and we started this process way back almost 15 years ago. And these are the people that started out. And I want to highlight a couple of people. Nick DiCarlo, he allowed us to go to one of his conferences and ask everybody at the conference to fill out 8 different surveys so we could figure out which one was the best. Andy King, who had connections in Europe with people who used the survey that we use. And last but not least, Terry Szymanski, who was the engine behind this group, who really got us to organized and got things done. We looked at many different theories, and we came with the COPS Act because of Andy King and his connection to the people in Europe. And we also sat down with the committee and did all the different surveys, so we knew which one we wanted to pick. And the one we wanted to pick was the Copenhagen Psychosocial Questionnaire. And it's now in version 3. When we started, it was in version 2. And this was the conference, the workshop that we held in 2023 in Hamilton. It looks like a sad bunch of pandemic refugees. But we anticipate in a few days to start the 2025 workshop in Sweden. And I think there's at least 70 to 100 people going to be there, a lot more than we had. So one of the issues in dealing with psychosocial issues in the workplace is that words really can get muddled. Stress, for instance, is both the risk factor and the health effect, and you can talk about good stress and bad stress, so it gets confusing. Psychological is about what's happening between your ears. It's the cognition, emotion, and motivations. Whereas psychosocial is the interaction between the social aspect of your workplace and what's going on in your mind. Mental health, by definition from the WHO, is the state of mental well-being that enables people to cope with the stresses of life, realize their abilities, learn well, work well, and contribute to their communities, much like Haley's Maslow hierarchy of needs. But whatever language you use, model or theory of stress, it will constrain your vocabulary, and this is important to realize. Here's the item from Bell Talk, and it talks about words mattering. And when you look at the Bell Talk program, it's about stigma reduction. And when you want to talk about your mental illness, mental struggles, you're involving some kind of vulnerability, which can or may not be safe in the workplace that you're in. So the different perspectives. One of the things that we dealt with head on was mental health versus psychosocial, and at different levels. So psychology is what's going on in your mind, and it's the individual focus, and psychosocial is what's going on in not only in your mind, but other people's minds in the environment that they're in. So it's an individual and collective responsibilities. Now this is Terry's tic-tac-toe table, and she actually drew this out on a napkin for Martin Shane at a conference once, and we've been using it ever since. But it's about primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention, and not just at the individual level, but also the organizational level. And this is the piece of the puzzle that we're focused on, is looking at the culture, the climate, the workplace structure and organization, and how that affects all these other things, because that's the source. And Terry didn't dream this up on her own, although she did. But other people had similar dreams. And this is one that we found in a paper by Cottrell et al. And they basically said most stress management interventions tend to occur at the level of the individual. Efforts to address the needs of the individual are less likely to succeed over time if stressful conditions in the workplace remain unaltered. So it stresses the importance of organization. And you're probably all familiar, especially those in health and safety, with the NIOSH's hierarchy of controls. Well, this has been translated just last year in a paper into a psychosocial hierarchy of controls. And I think this is interesting because at the bottom, the least effective is encourage personal change, whereas at the top, the most effective is eliminate unhealthy working conditions. And so you've all heard the adage, if all you have is a hammer, then all your problems look like nails. Well, if you look at workplace stress from a psychological point of view, your nails are stigma reduction, self-care, coping skills, mindfulness, CBT, and resiliency. However, these are all at the bottom of the hierarchy of controls for psychosocial factors. So it's important to look beyond just individual interventions. Another thing we learned is that you need a valid survey, and we took the Copenhagen Psychosocial Survey with all these factors in it, but when we did some pilot administrations at various conferences with a number of workers who went there, we found out there were things missing. For instance, whether or not you work shift work and whether you have unpaid hours, questions about culture and health and safety. We also added some extra COPSUC questions about symptoms. We added additional offensive behaviors like discrimination, and then of course, various demographics. The value of reference data, you need to compare it. When we started doing the survey, we compared it to the Danish population, which was, there was lots of data online about that. But then we ended up connecting with ECOS, a polling company, and then we did surveys in 2016, 2019, and 2023, and each one had over 4,000 respondents, and we used that to compare our results to. So for instance, here's the results of our latest survey, and it compares the different economic sectors, and you'll see healthcare and education services are right near the top. That's being having the most burnouts and other symptoms. Also, this is interesting. We broke it down by how many hours unpaid work that you do, and you can see that quantitative demands and other factors get worse as you have more and more hours without pay. However, the exception is possibilities for the development and meaning of work. People with high levels of that are willing to put in extra hours. And this observation also been published. Perez Shahidi just put out a paper on what he calls wage theft, and how he correlated that people who are doing more than 5 hours of unpaid work have higher rates of burnout and stress symptoms. And whereas Shahida is with the Institute of Work and Health, and they have been a great asset for us in getting our materials out and published along with the COPSUC International Network. And so Peter Smith especially has been helpful in doing the validity and reliability testing. We did some of it with the MIT group, the FACE validity, but also with the COPSUC International Network. And this is the paper that Peter and I and Avi Ramakisson put together that provides the validation for our survey. And we have a number of other surveys as well. There's a couple here in education. And with the Copenhagen Psychosocial Questionnaire Network, International Network, we published a validation paper in a number of different countries in 7 different languages. One of the things we've learned too is how to present results, how to visualize the data. Here's an example of our early graph and how we've added the numbers and how many are on the positive and negative end of the scale. This is the way we compared the Danish results to ours, and we used a different scale for the numbers, and this is how we do it now. So a much different style. For each of the scales, these are the graphs that we use. We tried stacked bar scales on their side, and now we're using this, which we think is just splitting them into better, average, and worse. This one was a real tough one. It's the correlation table, and this is how we started out with. This is where we are now. I've been toying with ideas on how to do it, and this was an idea that didn't turn out so well. And here's a 3D model, but again, it's not working out. It's hard to figure out where you are in this grid, and so we're sticking with what we have right now. Getting the response rate up. We've seen this slide a couple of times, but and you've heard about how Carrie got 86%. And this is a method that we use. She talked about some script that we provided her, and this is based on this an announcement, a reminder. 1 to 2 weeks later, a second reminder, and then a final note and a pre-survey announcement. So incentives, we're a little concerned about incentives at sometimes, because if you have a draw, it's awkward because it's an anonymous survey. And so some surveys, we've added a second link at the end of our survey so they can put their name in for a draw. What has been successful is providing a specific time and place in schools, for instance, allowing an hour or half an hour at the professional development day to do the survey. And then there's group incentives. The best group response in an organization gets a pizza party or 1 month's free parking or paid time off work. And then there's Carrie's method with the cream puffs. So they're all ethical issues, and there's the danger of people putting in multiple surveys and also questionable motivation. So I'm a little ambivalent about incentives myself. The length of the survey, this is what Haley talked about. It usually takes anywhere from 18 to 23 minutes. Survey fatigue is an issue, and the pollsters tell us that a survey should be no more than 7 minutes. However, short surveys run into the problems with face validity. You miss certain topics. You didn't ask about this. And Also, we can't answer questions that arise from the results, like where does the bullying come from, if we didn't add the questions about sources of bullying. And pulse surveys have problems with validity and the ability to measure change. It usually takes 1 to 2 years to measure change, and if you're doing it monthly, I'm not sure if the results are that meaningful. And again, Haley's experience is how we're learning about trying to reduce the amount. But as you can see, we're a little hesitant. We prefer the long, but that's in some situations, it's just not possible. In our experience, the best groups with good response are progressive workplaces that have strong group problem-solving capabilities, but also a workplace that's in the crisis mode. Often we get a very good response rate because people realize that they have serious problems. And it's the ones in between who are just doing it out of curiosity and aren't really committed to making changes that's the most difficult. And we look at them as being in a process of educating themselves. The pandemic, we added mental health screening questions. We were trying to avoid them in the past because we didn't want committees to be diagnosing individuals. However, we did add anxiety and depression screening questions, but we provide the results as a group frequency. So here are the result or the questions that are involved in the GAD2, the anxiety, and the PHQ2, the depression. And here are some results, and you can see how they compare to the Canadian average here. For some reason, our eco surveys are a good 10 points higher than the StatCan population ones, and we still are exploring why that is the case. But coming from Carrie's point of view, from her group, comparing DECEs to child and youth workers, it was interesting that child and youth workers have more exposure to violence, as seen at the bottom here, yet their levels of anxiety and depression were lower than, and again, I think it has to do with the training they have on how to deal with it. Qualitative assessments of comments. We have comments in various parts of the survey, health and safety concerns, the type of discrimination, and the further comments. And if you try to analyze those by hand, a large survey with a couple of thousand responses can take a long time. So we're exploring the use of artificial intelligence to summarize it. And for instance, working alone, here's an example. Difficulties when left alone to manage multiple cases due to insufficient staff and calls for support often go unanswered. It puts flesh on the stats. And here are some at the end of the survey. Staff report experiencing violence regularly in their roles without adequate support or recognition of the psychological toll. And management supports greater appreciation and respect. And once in a while, in large surveys, we throw in a quote as well. Here's one from a survey that's not Carrie's or Haley's, but performance objectives are not achievable. It is a form of mental cruelty that you are scored on a missed call, and when you are on the phone or logged off for your work hours, or when you're on a lunch break. Management schedules a meeting training, and that is mandatory attendance, yet they hold you accountable for missed calls while you're attending the meeting. So it gives you good examples. Also, it's not just the survey. Originally, we were so focused on providing a tool that we forgot to consider the context. And many of our workplaces that first filled out the survey were confused as to how to respond to the results. And that also happens today. So we realize that what happens before and after the survey are important. And if you don't get an adequate response to the survey, if you don't plan on doing anything with the results, it's better not to do the survey at all. So we recognize a five-step approach, a continuing improvement, where you learn, you organize, you assess, you change and evaluate, and that goes around. And workplaces are in different stages of awareness about psychosocial conditions in the workplace. Early is just regulatory compliance with violence and harassment regulations. Awareness is about the individual, reducing stigma. Risk assessment and management is when you recognize that you can measure these things and manage them on a group basis. And in many Nordic countries, this type of activity is looked upon as a way to optimize and innovate to create a better organization. We also put together a booklet for health and safety reps on how to change your concerns into action, and it's called knowledge activism. And if you're interested, there's a nice booklet online that you can download. Drivers that get things done, obviously there's production and meeting or money quality standards, doing the CSA standard, compensation and sickness and accident cost, laws, risk management, good practice, standard operating procedures, reputation. But I really like the last one here. James Ham, who was the author of the Joint Health and Safety, or the Occupational Health and Safety Act. He wasn't the author, but he was the precipitator anyway. Law is the conscience of those who have none. So it's just the right thing to do. Not everything can be measured. Often people quote it from Deming. However, it's a misquote. His actual quote was, "It's wrong to suppose that if you can't measure it, you can't manage it." And that's a costly myth. Now, what Einstein said, many of the things you can count don't count. Many of the things you can't count really count. So, and then you have Campbell's law. The more you make a quantitative social indicator a part of your social decision making, the more subject it will be to pressures for corruption and distortion. And I also want to just end off with the myth of evidence-based interventions. You don't need an evidence-based survey. You don't need a survey for that matter to assess psychosocial conditions. However, a survey for which there is evidence that it performs reliably and validly in a population like yours allows you to know what you are measuring and that it is reasonably stable, repeatable. A workplace committed to making things better can use a poor tool and still make improvements. However, it's like using a tent peg to spread peanut butter. That was my experience while camping once. A workplace that's not interested in changing can use an excellent tool and not make any improvements. It's not the tool, although a good tool makes it easier. It's the commitment to make the change that makes it work or not. There are no silver bullets. And lastly, I want to say to OHCOW and to my fellow workers and the COPSOC International, a big thank you for all the work you've done. We could not have done this alone. So thank you very much. Did I make it?
Yeah, just barely. I didn't. Thanks a lot, John. And that is a ton of information to try and put into 15 minutes. So I really appreciate the insights, and it's very valuable knowledge for all of us, I think, and particularly, and yes, Tony's just put up the Slido. I did beg people, don't leave without answering our little three question satisfaction poll so that we have some data, speaking of data, that may or may not mean anything, but it is meaningful to us to know that you learned something and might share it with others. But it also is part of our funding agreements. So we really appreciate if you're on a small device, there might be a something at the bottom of your screen that opens Slido. It should have opened for people that are on their computer. So thanks. Oh, mine's staying up because I haven't answered it. I guess I could say I'm satisfied, but just looking to see if there are any other questions that I may have missed. I threw some information in the chat a bit about things going on, including the reference to Faraz coming back at our research results session on the 4th week on the 22nd. Dorothy has shared a study from the pandemic times in US educators. And I don't know if you would like to speak to that, Dorothy, or John, if you're familiar with it. And then there was some reference earlier from Dorothy about the guarding minds versus stress assess, or not versus stress assess, but you touched on to some extent, I think, in your slide about various surveys, but I don't know if you want to respond to that at all.
Yes, it's a difficult issue, and it comes down to that second last slide. You can use a validated tool helps, but it's not the cure. And I think Haley said that too. The tool, the questionnaire doesn't solve the problem. It's what you do with the questionnaire that solves the problem or addresses or makes things better. And so it is true that just because you can't show the psychometric properties meet the statistical guidelines doesn't mean that the survey is useless. It's just more difficult because you don't know exactly what you're measuring. And if you don't know exactly what you're measuring, it makes it harder to deal with things. So if you have a survey that has the validity and reliability, it makes it a little plainer what you're dealing with. But again, it doesn't solve your problems. So there are advantages to using a validated tool, but validation is not everything.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that. And Dorothy's also added to the chat that the link that it's a new study just out, and it is, you know, because it's about the education sector, quite relevant to Carrie, your survey and experience. Carrie, you were going to respond to Lisa's comments. I don't know if you wanted to add anything, if that's still in your mind.
Unfortunately, Lisa had to leave.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say that some of the points that you had in there, John, as well, as about the different stages of where an employer might be at, is probably something that might have been a good slide for her as well, because I think everybody's on their own journey with their employer, and the fact that you kind of broke it down into those 4 areas actually helped me in regards to, you know, where do you go next? So dependent on where your employer is at. So.
Great, thanks, Haley. Oh, you're just not on camera right now. I was going to ask, actually, it came to mind, and I think that, oh, Dorothy, raise your hand, but about the considerations on doing the bigger survey with your workplace, since you're doing, and I understand some of it is balancing against other surveys. So there's survey competition, not only survey fatigue, but survey competition in the wellness space, I guess. But I know that, and I don't know that you mentioned it today, John, but sometimes we've found with these shorter surveys that people always want, well, you know, they want to look at the next, you know, well, here's a signal, what more can you tell us? But you can't tell them more without the more questions. And so I just wondered if you want to comment, Haley, on sort of what all the, besides the obvious, the length, I guess, or what are you thinking about doing a more fulsome survey, or even possibly doing it in a subset, in a, not the whole population or something like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we would be exploring more of a subset, probably, of like key areas or more clinical, or are there certain, like we have flagged certain units that are more like psychologically intense than others, like palliative care, complex medical, folks who are long-term vets, um,
Mhm.
or like, you know, dementia units, locked units, where it's like a lot heavier for staff. I think we would be maybe targeting those in a with the stress assessed and looking at it as a subset. It's not off the table. We just did our workplace culture survey explore that like workplace stress is our biggest issue.
Mm.
So definitely an opportunity there. And I think we just need to get clarity on like what are we going to do if we dive further? What are we going to do with that? Just like John said, because if you're not going to respond more than what we're doing now, then like what's the point in asking? So I think we really got to get clear on like what is it that we're willing to do before we go dig too deep. But yeah, it's a great question. Right now we're working on like little specifics. We've been using like the Radius tool through the
Mhm.
PSHSA. We've done a couple of positions, so we're kind of digging for the roots in other ways. But it's not off the table. We would like to work with you again, and just TBD what that will look like. But yes, we're
Yeah.
considering it.
Yeah, great. Thanks. I was actually just reflecting. It would be really interesting with your combination of acute and long-term care to see the difference between, because we would assume acute care more stressful, but I would having, you know, having a father-in-law in long-term care and the toll that it takes on the workers, I think to support that it would be really interesting, I think, to see those differences. And obviously they would have different needs and different response to things. So interesting. Dorothy, you have your hand up. Do you want to comment further or ask a question? Oh, we have to unmute you. Tony, can you unlock them? Oh, I sent a request.
Thanks, Val. I just wanted to let folks know that there is a survey going on now in Northwestern Ontario about occupational health, essentially. There's a lot of mental health questions in it, and I've been working to try and recruit participants. So I'm going to put in the chat a way to get hold of me. So if anybody on the webinar has an interest in this, wants to find out more, I can do presentations, tell you more, etc. But it covers some of the same ground that people have been talking about today. Thanks.
Great. Thanks. Yeah, Vicki Chrisman, the lead PI for that study, presented last year at our research day for Mayday. So that's also information available on our Mayday website. You can access that if anyone's interested. I don't see. Oh, wait. I have to switch from my hands up. I don't know if there's any other questions or comments. John, you posted the pandemic survey. I don't know if you want to speak about it.
Yeah, they were the education surveys that we did during the pandemic. Dorothy mentioned a recent study about education workers. We also looked at that during the pandemic. So if people are interested, those surveys are available, and I believe they're free to download.
The articles, yeah. Okay, great, thanks. So I don't see any other questions. I apologize if I've missed somebody. But I just wondered, I guess normally we ask each speaker then to share anything else that's come to mind as part of the wrap up. So Carrie, do you have any other thoughts you want to share about your experience or plans going forward?
I actually learned a lot from Haley too, working in a different through different employer and employment, that there are some strategies that you have in place that actually makes me want to talk to you in regards to maybe how I can move forward with that in my workplace. I think basically because we all have different workplaces, different things work, but there's some of those ideas that we could maybe pull to be able to educate more as well in our workplaces. So I appreciated all that. And yeah, I'm also, next steps are a big thing with me, and trying to figure out how to navigate that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. How about you, Haley? Anything else you want to share?
Yeah, I thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to collaborate across multi-sectors. So thanks for creating this opportunity. I think, as you mentioned, Carrie, like we can learn a lot from each other, and we're fighting a similar battle just in our own areas. And the more that we can like lean in on each other and not feel like we're the only ones doing this at our organizations, but like team up and share like what's going well, and that we can move more forward together. And I really appreciated, John, you're mentioning I screenshotted, so hopefully you're sending the slides of like the primary interventions and what we really need to work on in that the psychosocial funnel, and that a lot of us are investing in like the bottom two, but like let's start investing in the more impactful ones. So thank you for sharing that. That was super important.
Yep, the slides should definitely be posted. I'm just double checking. I sent John's already, but they're not up yet, but they will be probably by the end of today. And yours too. I just hadn't sent them over to Lisa yet, but so great, thanks. And thanks again, Haley, for sharing your story and for all your leadership in the workplace. And John, how about you? So you've been reflecting on 15 years and reflecting on today. What are some of the final words?
I'm going to retire. No, just joking. No, I'm really so grateful to Carrie and Haley for being willing to share their experiences, and especially Carrie, who's been a help to other OSSTF locals when they're struggling with how to do this. She's encouraged many people. So I really thank you for sharing your stories.
Yeah,
Thanks for the opportunity.
Very much enriches the conversation. By the way, I did remember there was a question way back, Carrie, which you may not have seen, around the document that you showed. Was it something Norm had shared, or I don't know if you are able to type psychosocial hazards. Oh, so it's the Workers' Health and Safety Center's psychosocial hazards and workplace mental health. It's they have a course that they offer, right? So it's the guy from that.
Yeah. So Norm did the course for us, and
Yeah.
and that's when he mentioned the survey. So.
Okay, good. Norm Westbury being the health and safety officer for OSSTF, right? But also a trainer for Workers' Health and Safety Center.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I think we'll wrap up now. I appreciate everybody's time. We will be back here next week for Mayday Mayday 3, at which we're talking about the assessment of assessments, or assessment, as I called it, exploring survey options. So a little bit more, Peter Smith from IWH is going to talk a bit about surveying in general, why it matters, what you're measuring, what some options are. Daryl Stevenson, our ergonomist, is going to do a bit of a survey of surveys, English language surveys. And then we'll have someone, Katrina Birch from Public Safety, Health and Safety Association, talking about their workplace well-being survey and some insights and experience from its application. So, and then of course we have week 4 on research results, which we talked about, and we're hoping to have a pan-Canadian conversation about what different provinces are doing about psychosocial hazards and the prevention of injury and harm on May 29th. So looking forward to seeing everybody back again. Thanks. So farewell. Have a good week. Oh, and happy Mother's Day to all who celebrate.
Thank you.
Bye.